This video is sponsored by Youtooz. The holiday seasons are upon us again, folks, and Christmas is right around the corner. So for the last minute shopper, or anyone really, may I suggest checking out Youtooz.com. Youtooz is a website dedicated to releasing adorable happy figures of some of your favorite characters from pop culture entertainment, such as animes I'm currently watching, like Attack on Titan and Spy Family, classic cartoons like The Peanuts, and even internet celebrities. Though if you're viewing my content, you most likely are into Godzilla stuff. Well, I'm happy to say Youtooz even had you covered for that, with their brand new lineup of Godzilla figures, like Mothra, Mechagodzilla, and of course, King Ghidorah. Isn't he adorable? And unlike his movie counterpart, he's not too tall, so I can place him pretty much anywhere. I'd be happy if I got this as a present, and you or your friends would be too, as they're the perfect gift to add to any Godzilla fan's collection. These figures are limited though, so it's best to get them as soon as possible before they're gone forever. You can check out the link in the description, or head right over to Youtooz.com to grab your Godzilla collection today. In 1995, Toho had released Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, which was their final Godzilla movie in their second wave of kaiju films, often titled the Heisei series. After the run ended, Toho had put Godzilla on a temporary hiatus, giving the kaiju star a break, at least till around the 50th anniversary in 2004. In 1998, TriStar Pictures, a division of Sony Entertainment, gave their own interpretation of the character, with results being mixed to downright negative. Toho acted upon the bad reception to the Hollywood-made film and brought Godzilla back earlier than anticipated, with their new film,
Godzilla 2000 Millennium,
translated as Godzilla 2000 Millennium, released December of 1999 in Japan. Around the time, some Sony executives happened to be in Japan to witness the hype around the new motion picture, often seeing lines outside of cinemas waiting to see the new Godzilla film. After witnessing the excitement around the movie, Sony had the idea to give it a theatrical release in the US. Because even though the 1998 movie was a critical bomb, it certainly wasn't a financial one. So a Godzilla movie being made by the studio that originally created the character could prove to be a winning strategy for Sony, especially when realizing that Toho had more Godzilla pictures in the works. Sony first had reviewed the film with an English dub provided by Toho themselves, which was made by the Hong Kong studio Omni Productions, the same company that had dubbed the majority of the Heisei-era Godzilla films. The test screenings weren't too positive, as the executives just laughed at everything about the movie. Michael Schlesinger was set to produce the American version of the film and had high hopes for the project, though could admit the film in its current state wouldn't sit too well with an American audience. So Sony had spent $1 million to re-edit and even redub the film, adding in additional or revamped sound effects and music scores, trimming the film to flow at a smoother pace, and getting professional actors to dub the characters to speak English. As for the Omni Productions dub, given Sony's efforts into making their own English version, the Omni one will most likely stay forgotten. With Sony's blessings, the movie was reworked into Godzilla 2000, same as the Japanese title, just minus the Millennium subtitle, and that's not the only instance we'll see Millennium removed from the film. There is quite a bit to go through here, and I'll get into as much as I can, but I will leave out small things that your attention span most likely won't care for. If you do, however, want a full in-depth comparison that goes over every minor detail of this picture, then you can check out Censorship.com, where they have a page dedicated to Godzilla 2000's differences between its Eastern and Western versions. I'll leave a link if you're interested to read it, but please do so after this video. Anyway, with that and the brief history lesson out of the way, let's dive in. The first thing is the logos. The Japanese cut has the traditional Toho logo, followed by another Toho logo, while the US cut has the TriStar logo, followed by the International Toho logo. That's a lot of logos. There's a small edit that comes in after we see Yoshida setting up an antenna. There's a clip that shows the character Yuki cleaning a camera being shown in the Japanese cut slightly before being shown in the American version. Also, the wind sounds more fiercer in G2K than it does in G2KM. I'm just going to say now that I'm not going to go over every single sound difference, because I'd be practically doing the whole movie if I did. So from here on out, I'll only mention some noteworthy sound edits. Anyway, a wide shot of the characters setting up has credits sliding from the background only in the US cut, and there's a few more instances where these playful credits pop up throughout the intro. A few shots of a train station are removed from G2K. In a moment where Shinoda and his daughter Io are explaining things to Yuki, a close-up of Yuki's face is removed from G2K. There's also a slight line change that has Io calling Yuki Oba-san, which is a word to describe older women in Japanese, while the English version has Io calling her an imbecile.
You really are an imbecile.
Imbecile?
When we cut to the lighthouse, the American version trims a bit of an exterior shot down, along with a second or two of the man inside. Once we get to Godzilla's reveal, we get a close-up of his eye with a title popping out, which are different in both cuts. It's also worth noting that the American cut freeze frames on Godzilla's eye, while the Japanese one does not. After Godzilla's reveal, the Japanese version cuts to the main characters driving to Godzilla's location, while the American version stays at the lighthouse where Godzilla is, which has a few seconds of things trimmed here and there. Afterwards, G2K then plays the driving scene. In the scene where Godzilla passes the restaurant, a wind-up of his tail hitting it is present only in the Japanese version, as the American one cuts already to his tail hitting it. A shot of the character's Jeep over an edge is played longer in the Japanese version. Also, before stopping the car, Shinoda yells, "Look out," only in G2K. The English version of this moment also adds new music composed by J. Peter Robinson, while there's no music in the Japanese cut. There's also added sound effects in G2K when the characters are pointing the headlights on Godzilla. When Godzilla is looking down on the characters, a shot of Io holding her ears, as well as the equipment short-circuiting, is removed from G2K. When the characters are escaping from Godzilla, a shot of the Jeep turning around is removed from the US cut, which works better since the Jeep in the following scene is still pointing in Godzilla's direction, keeping continuity consistent in the English version. When we cut to Katagiri talking to Miyasaka, Katagiri's intro is trimmed down a bit in G2K, as well as a bit of dialogue added to give mention to a meteor, whereas the Japanese version leaves that vague. This boy shown here for a few seconds has a name, but you would only know that if you saw the Japanese version. During Godzilla's raid in the beginning, additional roars can be heard only in the American version. When Shinoda tells Yuki to take some pictures, we actually see her taking some photos only in the Japanese version. A close-up of Godzilla is removed. There's a rearranged shot in G2K that shows a shot of Yuki before Godzilla, whereas it's the other way around in G2KM. Also, the Godzilla shot is shortened down a bit. G2K trims down a bit of the submarine's introduction, the probe it dispatches, as well as remove the location text. In the scene where Yuki is asking for directions, added goofy music is present only in the American cut, most likely to add to the comedic tone of the scene. After this moment, there's a whole bit of footage of Yuki searching around for Shinoda and Io that is removed from G2K. When we get to the Crisis Management Center, the location text this time is actually translated in the US edit. During the scene where Shinoda and Io are about to eat breakfast, the TV heard in the background is playing a news report in the Japanese version, while the US cut is instead playing the movie Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, particularly a moment where the actor Paul Frees is speaking, as a nod to his contribution in dubbing earlier Godzilla films. During the moment where Shinoda is getting help from this guy, who may be his friend, added music can be heard only in G2K. Another example of added music to G2K is during a few scenes where we go back and forth from Katagiri to the main characters, to eventually to the two parties meeting each other, again with these moments having no music in the Japanese cut. A shot of Katagiri's helicopter is cut, as well as a shot of him getting out of it. During the scene where the meteor is rising from the sunlight, the shot of Miyasaka looking towards the horizon is played earlier in G2K. According to the audio commentary, it was edited this way to help give the audience a clear understanding on what the rock is reacting to. Several shots of the tanks moving is shortened down in the US cut, as well as the scene having two different music tracks heard in both versions. A cutaway to tanks is removed. When Godzilla arrives on the scene, the shot that lingers on Yuki is shortened down a bit in the US edit, as well as more of Robinson's music replacing Hattori's score once Godzilla surfaces. It's also worth noting that during the battle sequence, Hattori's music stops a bit in for silence, as for Robinson's score, it continues to be heard throughout the fight. A shot of helicopters is shortened down. Additional Godzilla roars can be heard in G2K, as well as the roars in general sounding a bit more punched up than in the Japanese version. Scenes of the military moving back are trimmed down in the American cut. A shot of Godzilla roaring after detonating a mine is cut. A shot of Shinoda arriving on his bike is played after Godzilla triggers the mine in the Japanese version, and later before the missiles strike in the American version. A close-up of Godzilla is shortened down in the US cut. A shot of tanks moving back is removed. When the Full Metal missiles are setting up, Hattori's score plays back, while Robinson's music continues to be heard in the dub, though both tracks would go silent once the missiles are launched. It's also worth noting that the missiles have more of a painful sound effect to them in the Japanese cut, while the US one gives them a more typical explosion sound effect. A close-up of Godzilla is shortened down. A shot of Godzilla being fired at is trimmed down. Also, the following scene where the jets fly over Yuki and Io are played a bit later in G2K, as the US edit keeps us on Godzilla for a bit longer. When the extended Godzilla clip does play in the Japanese version, the final moment in it with Godzilla lighting up his dorsal plates is removed, as well as a close-up of Godzilla ready to fire his atomic breath being cut. This was done in the US version, since Godzilla never ends up firing his breath in this scene, though there are a few shots still in the dub that shows his back still glowing. It's also worth mentioning that this close-up shot of him, while not in the US version, can still be seen in the American trailer.
If you can't take the heat, run.
Anyway, the moment where the jets are attacking Godzilla has different music heard in both versions. A shot of a soldier, as well as Yuki and Io looking towards the UFO, is removed. I should mention the UFO has a sound effect on it that can only be heard in G2K. When the UFO is shot off by Godzilla's breath towards a train, some shots of the moment are removed. Also, the people in the train have different sets of dialogue in both cuts, with the Japanese one having these guys comment on their trip, while the US one has them talking about a woman. When Shinoda rides by Godzilla's footprints, music can be heard only in G2K, as well as a shot of Shinoda being trimmed down a bit. Another scene with location text is removed in the American version, as well as a shot of some divers near the rock. When Io hangs up the phone after talking to Shinoda, the scene cuts in G2K, but continues in G2KM. When Shinoda and Miyasaka are examining Godzilla's cells and discover his regeneration abilities, they give it the name Regenerator G1 in the US version, while it's called Organizer G1 in the Japanese version. Though if you're watching the Sony Blu-ray, which has the Japanese version, the subtitles still refer to it as Regenerator G1, despite the characters clearly saying Organizer G1 in English.
Organizer G1. Organizer G1.
When the saucer breaks free from the cables, new music from Robinson can be heard only in G2K. A shot of Katagiri in a chopper is rearranged in the US version. Also, a shot of him warning another chopper is removed. A shot of Shinoda, Io, and Miyasaka reacting to the attack is removed. The UFO flying over a building is shortened down. When a taxi crashes into a car, the Japanese version shows the man exiting the vehicle, before it also gets rammed into by the same exact car that the taxi drove into. Just check out the license plate. A news broadcast going over the attack is removed. In a scene where a man notices the flying saucer, the man for some reason speaks Yiddish in the American cut. It should also be worth noting that he was dubbed by the movie's American producer, Mike Schlesinger. When the saucer is noticed outside, the character Ishii gasps from the sight of it, while in the American version, he says,
Great Caesar's ghost!
During a scene where the military is setting up, added music is heard only in G2K. A scene of a man explaining the oxygen rates going down is removed. A shot of Yuki putting her laptop down is cut. When Shinoda and Io are running to get Yuki out of the building that's about to be bombed, there's a bit of a dialogue change between them and the soldiers. In the Japanese version, Miyasaka contacts the soldiers to let Shinoda go through, while in the American cut, there's no such dialogue, and some unknown sound heard only in the American cut distracts the soldiers long enough for the two to sneak by him. A A close-up of Io is removed. The dub once again adds music to the scene where Katagiri and the soldiers are looking ahead towards the building that's about to be bombed, with even more additional music in G2K that plays when Yuki is trying to tell the soldiers that someone is still in the building. Shinoda preparing to leave before noticing the word Millennium appearing on the monitors is removed. During the scene where Yuki and Io turn back around for Shinoda, Hattori's score in G2K gets blended with Robinson's score for a more uplifting effect on the moment. During a scene where Katagiri is about to push the detonation button, music can be heard only in the American cut. What's also exclusive to the American version are these odd sounds that can be heard when inside the building. A few scenes with displays showing various words is removed from the American version. A shot of the CCI as well as Shinoda running towards an elevator are removed. When Shinoda lowers himself from the elevator cable, the American version re-edits the scene to show some explosion shots from outside. The music here is also different in both scenes. A shot of Yuki and Io running from the building is removed. A moment with Shinoda kicking his way out from the elevator is removed. When Yuki and Io are looking for Shinoda, added music can be heard only in the dub, though Hattori's music does kick in through the end. The whole Millennium alien subject is completely ignored in the American cut. A shot of Godzilla walking is rearranged to show up later in G2K. A small bit of Godzilla walking is shortened down. A few seconds of a panning shot showing the characters is cut down. When Godzilla battles the saucer, different music is used in both cuts. I also can't forget the drastically different sound effect when Big G's tail slams the UFO. The close-up of Godzilla is shortened down. The UFO's beam firing on Godzilla lasts longer in the Japanese cut. The alien creature, known as Millennium, has different roars used for it in both cuts. Personally, I find the Japanese one more eerie sounding. Orga also gets a different roar in both versions, with his Japanese one being reused from Cretaceous King Ghidorah, while the American roar used the voice of Natalia D. Adams, the daughter of sound designer John Adams, as well as a few other effects layered on top of it. Going a bit off topic, Orga's roars would be reworked again for the Pipeworks Godzilla video game series, with a little bit of his Japanese roar still intact in them. Anyway, during Orga's transformation, different music is heard in both versions, this time with the American cut using a remix of Akira Ifukube's themes, the composer for many of the Godzilla movies, before the music shifts over into the original Robinson music, which pretty much lasts for the remainder of the fight sequence. In fact, Hattori's score is completely removed from the final battle in G2K. A scene with Godzilla biting Orga lasts longer in the Japanese cut. Now a shot of Orga biting Godzilla goes on longer in the Japanese version, with some of it rearranged for later in G2K. In a scene where Godzilla roars at Orga's corpse, the US version edits it to where the body falls after Godzilla roars, whereas the Japanese one lingers on it a bit before doing so. During the credits sequence, the Japanese version plays Hattori's music, with Godzilla's footsteps being heard as he approaches the screen, while the American cut instead uses another Ifukube theme. Also worth noting is that the theatrical version of G2K actually had a The End title card with a question mark that followed, as to pay tribute to the sci-fi films of the 50s. Both Schlesinger and Toho weren't too happy about the font chosen for the sequence, and I personally don't blame them, and all future home releases would remove the font entirely. Godzilla 2000 is a rare case to which the American cut of a Toho Godzilla film is the preferred version to watch, with even the director of the movie, Takao Okawara, preferring it over his own version. The original Japanese picture lingers on a lot of pointless shots, and even has many filler segments. So editing around all that to give a more condensed, but easy to understand story was the right way to go for an American theatrical release, even if it sadly underperformed at the box office. Despite that, it is still looked at by many fans as the superior cut. Another thing that is often praised is Robinson's additional music cues. Takayuki Hattori's score for Godzilla 2000 would be my favorite soundtrack of the Godzilla movies he's worked on, but I'll admit the main theme just kinda gets reused over and over again, while Robinson's music adds a nice variety to the soundtrack throughout the picture. The one problem I do have with the dub is the dub itself. Obviously, with an American re-edit, we lose the performances of actors like Takehiro Murata, Naomi Nishida, and many of the cast. Though the Godzilla fandom, for the most part, really doesn't care about the actors like that, so I guess it's no big deal. In the end, both versions are fine, but G2K is the preferred cut if you do choose to watch the film. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Prepare yourself for the ultimate showdown on August 18th. Godzilla 2000, rated PG, opens Friday.